For almost 8 centuries, Muslim-ruled kingdoms shaped the history of the Iberian Peninsula. They built cities, libraries, palaces, gardens, roads, and water systems that still influence Spain and Portugal today. But who were the Moors? Where did they come from? And what really happened in Al-Andalus? The first thing to understand is that Moor was not the name of one single people. It was a European term used broadly for Muslim populations connected to North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. Many were Amazigh, often called Berber in older sources. Others were Arab, Iberian converts, people of mixed ancestry, and communities whose identities changed across generations. So when we say the Moors, we are using a historical umbrella term, not describing one uniform race or nation. Their story in Iberia began in the early 8th century, when the Visigothic kingdom that ruled much of the peninsula was already facing internal conflict. In 711, an army led by Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed from North Africa into southern Iberia. The army defeated King Roderick, traditionally associated with the Battle of Guadalete, and Muslim forces moved rapidly through large parts of the peninsula. The conquest was not a single clean takeover, and it was not completed in one dramatic day. Different towns and regions responded in different ways. Some resisted, others negotiated terms. Some local elites cooperated with the new rulers because they were already caught in civil wars and power struggles. By the middle of the 8th century, most of Iberia was governed by Muslim authorities, although Christian kingdoms remained in the north. The new territory became known as Al-Andalus. At first, it was connected to the wider Umayyad world, but political change soon transformed its future. In 750, the Abbasid Revolution destroyed the Umayyad dynasty in the Middle East. One surviving Umayyad prince, Abd al-Rahman, escaped across North Africa and reached Iberia. In 756, he established an independent emirate based in Córdoba. That decision changed the balance of power. Córdoba was no longer simply a distant province. It became the center of an independent state with its own court, army, administration, and ambitions. Over time, the city grew into one of the most important urban centers in medieval Europe. The height of Umayyad power came under Abd al-Rahman III. In 929, he declared himself caliph, claiming both political authority and religious prestige. Under the Caliphate of Córdoba, the government strengthened its control, diplomacy expanded, and the capital became famous for its monumental architecture and intellectual life. Córdoba's great mosque became the symbol of that power. Its rows of red and white arches created a visual language that remains instantly recognizable. The building was expanded by successive rulers, and its scale reflected the city's importance. Later, after Christian forces captured Córdoba in 1236, the mosque was converted into a cathedral. That later history is part of the monument too. It shows how buildings can carry multiple layers of political and religious memory. But Al-Andalus was not only about palaces and monuments. It was also a society organized around agriculture, trade, taxation, law, and urban life. Farmers and engineers developed or expanded irrigation networks, canals, reservoirs, water wheels, and carefully managed gardens. Techniques for cultivating crops such as citrus fruits, rice, sugarcane, and certain vegetables spread or became more important across parts of Iberia, although the exact origins of individual crops and methods were often connected to wider networks reaching across the Middle East and North Africa. Water was especially important. In a dry Mediterranean climate, control of water meant control of food, wealth, and political power. The legacy of those systems can still be seen in parts of southern Spain, where historic channels and terraces continue to shape the landscape. Al-Andalus also became a meeting point for knowledge. Scholars worked in medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, geography, and literature. Arabic was a major language of administration and scholarship, while Latin, Romance languages, and Hebrew remained part of the wider cultural environment. The translation movement is often simplified into a story where Europe rediscovered knowledge that had disappeared. The reality was more connected. Scholars in Muslim-ruled lands preserved, translated, debated, and extended works from Greek, Persian, Indian, Jewish, and earlier Roman traditions. Later, texts moved through translation centers in places such as Toledo, where Arabic works were rendered into Latin and entered wider European intellectual networks. This exchange helped transmit mathematical ideas, astronomical tables, medical writing, philosophical arguments, and technologies of writing and measurement. It did not mean that Al-Andalus was a perfect society or that every idea traveled in one direction. It means that Iberia was part of a much larger Mediterranean world where knowledge moved through conquest, trade, migration, translation, and debate. The idea of peaceful coexistence in Al-Andalus also needs careful treatment. Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived in the same political world, and at certain times, cities were genuinely diverse. Jewish intellectual and economic life flourished during important periods. Christian communities, known as Mozarabs, maintained their religion under Muslim rule, while Arabic language and culture influenced them deeply. But coexistence did not mean modern equality. Non-Muslim communities could face special taxes and legal restrictions. Their position changed depending on the ruler and the period. Some governments were relatively pragmatic, others imposed severe pressure or persecution. There were also moments when Muslim rulers fought other Muslim rulers and when Christian kingdoms attacked Muslim territories. The history is not a simple golden age. It is a record of cooperation, hierarchy, conflict, creativity, and change, all happening at once. In 1031, the Caliphate of Córdoba collapsed after years of internal conflict. Al-Andalus broke into a collection of smaller states known as the taifas. These kingdoms competed with one another, sometimes fought one another, and often paid tribute to stronger Christian rulers in the north. Yet the Taifa period was not simply a decline. Some Taifa courts became major centers of poetry, architecture, music, and scholarship. Political division, however, weakened Muslim control. North African dynasties, including the Almoravids and later the Almohads, intervened in Iberia and temporarily reunited large parts of Al-Andalus. They brought military strength and new architectural styles, but their rule also faced resistance and pressure from Christian kingdoms. The Christian advance was a long process rather than one continuous campaign. Northern kingdoms expanded at different speeds, stopped, made alliances, fought among themselves, and sometimes cooperated with Muslim states against rival Christian or Muslim powers. The word Reconquista is useful for describing the centuries of Christian expansion, but it can also make the process sound more unified and inevitable than it really was. A major turning point came in 1085, when Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile captured Toledo. The city